I'm here with Mike Weicher from Lyda Law Firm, and we're talking about legal topics of the day, including some things that might surprise clients. Okay, first of all, just give us a little bit about your background.
Biography. I think I'm coming up on 20 years as a lawyer. Um, Lived in Chicago, grew up in Chicago, started there, worked at a couple of small firms in suburban Chicago from 2003. Um, had my own practice from 2013 to right before COVID, end of 2019, early 2020. Moved here to Colorado, outside Denver. Picked up the same kind of, or continued the same kind of legal practice, small business, representing small businesses, real estate disputes. I had worked in the foreclosure era from 27 to 2013, doing foreclosures and real estate title work. When I went in my own practice, it became a little more of a neighborhood lawyer, again, representing the small businesses with whatever issues came along. Or in Illinois, I did real estate closings, which they do not use lawyers for here in Colorado, but still pick up a fair amount of like disputes regarding real estate sales before, after, during real estate deals. So that's kind of a mini practice breakdown. And so I've been here at Lyda for Lyda Group, Lyda Law, since July of 2022.
And so you're based in Colorado, you're licensed in Colorado, you're also licensed in Illinois.
Correct. So kept up Illinois, although I don't have too many things going in Illinois.
I think it's really interesting. This is something I've thought about, is that when people say, what type of law do you practice? I think I give them kind of a weird answer, which is small business law, because that's not really an area of the law. Typical lawyer might talk about really more of a specialty when they answer that question. But I think when you're representing small businesses, you've got to be able to, you know, help them at least handle or be equipped to figure out the next steps for handling anything that comes in their way. So you've got to generalize a little bit more. I think that's the case for generalizing a bit when you're representing small businesses.
I think that's right. I think from when I've gone to a networking group or a chamber of commerce, or some friend calls in and says, I know a person with a small retail business, small consulting
Yeah,
business, solo type businesses. Um, I think they are hesitant, usually budget wise, to hire a lawyer in the first place.
yeah,
And so they go to someone, maybe they have a dispute or a collection issue, or they're
yeah,
negotiating a lease, and they are a little less inclined, like maybe rightly or not. I mean, I handle the things I think I can handle well. Um, they don't want to go downtown and pay $800
yeah,
an hour for someone who's a mergers and acquisitions
yeah,
business lawyer, and so
right.
they go to someone who calls themselves a small business.
So a huge company will have in-house counsel, and then they'll have a different law firm to handle each type of need. And it's not just that they pay each of those law firms an hourly rate, it's that they have to pay a retainer deposit to each of those law firms, $100,000, something like that. So they'll have, a Fortune 500 company will have one firm that handles their product liability cases, maybe just the, particular type of plastic product liability cases, one that handles anything involving asbestos liability cases, one that handles mergers and acquisitions, one that handles employment law, one that handles, maybe representing the officers in shareholder disputes and things like that. Small business can't do that.
I I think that's probably right. I don't have
Yeah.
as much experience with the Fortune 500 company paying the retainer, but I know they use specialty firms for outside things. I
Yeah.
think a small business person wants at least someone to tell them, give them some guidance as to what
Yeah.
do they need. Like if
Right.
I'm trying to think of something that, if you had something very special, I like your asbestos case,
Yeah.
or a very specific employment discrimination case, they may
Yeah.
think about, well, they may have insurance that covers it, or they may try to find
Yeah.
someone who's a little more specialized,
Yeah.
if it's something very peculiar.
When you're representing small businesses, you might sometimes, or you might frequently handle an entire matter for them, or you might just serve kind of as like their outside in-house counsel. Have you ever heard the phrase outhouse counsel? Outhouse
I
case?
have not heard outhouse counsel.
Yeah.
um,
Outhouse
I mean, I think
counsel.
you're right. Well, I would say, again, we haven't talked about this before. I think most small business people are going to run into the 8 or 10 common things,
That's
and
true.
that's where the things that we can handle
Yeah.
all of that. And then
Right.
if they get into something, if they get really huge and
Yeah.
need to issue stock or some securities
Yeah.
issue, they're going to be profitable
Ryan
enough
could
to
do
deal
that,
with something
first of
like,
all.
okay, well, maybe we have
Yeah.
people, we were talking, I know
Yeah.
we do trademarks. I don't personally
Right.
handle it. I mean, I've dabbled a little
A
bit.
patent. We can't do a patent
Okay,
yet.
patent is scientific
Yet.
specialty. Okay.
Yeah, you need us to be barred for that.
Right.
So yeah, but then you know, it's hard to find a lawyer. But if a small business has you as their lawyer, as their outhouse counsel,
Outhouse counsel, yeah.
you're gonna. I can't say that word for some reason.
Right.
You're gonna be the person who helps them find a patent
Let me
lawyer.
let me talk to
Yeah.
my acquaintances and find someone and vet them a little bit and try to
Yeah.
steer them in the right direction for the specialties.
I want to do some videos about this, but have you ever thought about like I've talked to Jameson, for example, about this because she had a skateboard company before she went to law school, and it's like so she's been in this situation. But how does a small business lawyer, lots of the people we know are lawyers. That's not the case for usual
Right.
like
right.
people who, we know lawyers because they're just the peer group that we went to school with,
Right.
worked with, all that sort of stuff. If you were a small business owner and you didn't know any lawyers, what would you do? How do they find lawyers?
I think there's a couple of categories from my experience. I think
Yeah.
there's a certain category that searches the internet.
Yeah.
They sort of think, well, it's like the equivalent of the phone book nowadays.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And
right.
then depending on their issue, maybe this is some people who have personal legal issues, like they're fighting their neighbor, or fighting their sister, whoever
Yeah.
they're fighting. I think they're more inclined to go to the internet because they don't necessarily want to advertise all their friends. I have this difficult
Right.
legal issue, so they look up on the internet. So
Mhm.
so we put our name out on the internet,
Yeah.
whatever extent. And then there's another group that has trusted
Right.
acquaintances, and that'll be their accountant, their financial planner, their
Insurance broker.
or family friend who's a lawyer, or
Yeah.
sibling, father, cousin, relative
Yeah.
who's a lawyer. And then if you are their acquaintance, they'll say, "I've got the guy to handle your
Yeah.
contract issue
Yeah.
or real estate issue or whatever it is."
If I'm trying to find a service provider for a new type of service that I haven't hired before, I just open up all those tabs. Tap 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 tap.
The ones
On
I
my
just
browser.
described, or you have your own
On the
searches?
yeah. Well, I mean, it's just I do the internet.
So if you're talking about like home repair things, so over the years I've had a
Even an
variety of.
accountant. I would find an accountant through the internet probably rather than recommendations.
I like recommendations for home contractors because I think that's a
Mm.
very difficult
Yeah.
business for them to get the job done.
Yeah.
Like somebody who's on time, under budget, on budget, and shows up and will answer your call. I've gone with personal recommendations, but I think
That's
I
a
would
good
agree
idea,
for
yeah.
like a tech service or a plumber or an electrician, it's probably 50-50 between the internet and asking acquaintances.
For some reason, I kind of feel like if I get a recommendation for somebody, it's going to be too expensive, and I want to do research on the internet to find the right price point.
That could be, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's almost borderline superstition.
Maybe I'm a Luddite. I still go personal recommendation for most.
That's probably
That would be my again, if somebody's $1 million for dental services, maybe I'll, then you search around.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right that people can feel bashful or embarrassed about finding a lawyer because often they're finding a lawyer because they have a problem.
Right.
And have you ever had the experience where people feel like, I mean, this is pretty frequent, they have the worst problem, they're so embarrassed, you've never heard anything so bad before, is how they feel, and you're like, I have heard worse, it's okay.
I tell you the truth, that has not had like someone like professionally.
Yeah.
People, I have not had someone come and say, "You've got to hear this."
Yeah. Oh, I'm so
maybe
embarrassed. I didn't get a signed contract for this deal I did.
I've had a few, but not that often. Somebody in a deposition once admitted to me. They said, "Yep, I forget. This was 10 years ago, but she said, "Yep, I'm the dummy. I signed it and I didn't read it," and they just fessed up to it.
Yeah.
But I don't like maybe I just have a different bad luck or good luck, or like clients who sort of think, well, this is what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know, or like who are less ashamed of their negligence or problems.
Yeah, right.
Or issues.
So, okay, what type of problems, thinking about it from the client's perspective of problems to solve, what type of problems can somebody come to you to help solve?
Okay, recent we were talking about small businesses.
Yeah.
I have like a common one. People don't like. You can probably an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure for like signing. So like a commercial lease. Like someone has a storefront lease. Like I have a client now with a small business, storefront retail lease, and well, their landlord is unhappy with the way they're like managing the what they're using the building for. So I think just paying a lawyer 2, 3, 4 hours is probably like getting on the front end, getting you like all sorts of information on like here's the 8 or 10 things that like go wrong regularly. Here's some problems. Here's what to look out for, or here's evil things that are in the lease. There's one that I'll see occasionally in commercial leases of the confession of judgment, where they try to like shortcut like even going to court to get a judgment. That was one that popped up. Popped up in Illinois. I don't know if I haven't seen it, but there's all these like small business, like the sleazy slumlord equivalent for commercial. Will put all sorts of crazy stuff in their lease,
right?
And it may or may not be negotiable, but at least the client knows it's in there. I think, and this is we're talking about, how do you add, or we've talked in the past about how to adding value, like on some level, just having a lawyer at all, like once you are in a problematic situation, just to send a lawyer letter back to the other side is like you've just moved up a whole level of like they're going to stop. And for now, some very litigious people or sophisticated opponents will just plow right through and say, okay, you still owe us the $1 million. But others that may have more tenuous cases, or at least it will put them on level playing field. I don't know. This is
so true.
Illinois versus Colorado. I found that in Illinois, or maybe east of Mississippi, there is this is stereotyping the world. I don't know.
I'm going to edit this out.
In my experience, in Illinois, it was unlikely to find someone who didn't want to use a lawyer once they got above a certain level of like small business issue, like doing a deal, buying buying a small business or buying a piece of real estate. Here in Colorado, I have found it's almost the flip. Like 80-90% of people think, I don't need a lawyer to buy a 30-acre parcel of vacant commercial land.
I have a multi-million-dollar business.
Right, $4 or $5 million. I had a guy who was selling. I won't say the specific type of a $4 million small business. He had grown it, and he was getting bought out by I think some sort of venture capital firm. Like it was a successful business that was being. He was going to keep managing it, but they were real happy with it. And it was like an afterthought and shocking that he would pay, I don't know, a lawyer a couple. I think it was a big sophisticated deal for a $4 million thing, which isn't Fortune 500, but it is not a $50. It's not your $1,500 used Honda Civic. And he was like, "Oh my God, how do I have to pay a lawyer?"
I try to not let it hurt my feelings, but it is kind of like lawyers aren't worth it.
So the first 4 or 5 hours, I think, or whatever, more or less, 2-3 hours of reading the document is saying nothing jumps out at you. So I've come across that situation 20 different times where you can read it and say, okay, there's nothing crazy in there. It might be tilted toward the other side. Or you can highlight and tell them, no, this is really weird, and you want to dig in further.
Yeah. Okay, so if somebody's hiring a lawyer, either a small business owner or a homeowner who's in a real estate dispute, what criteria do you think they should use to select a lawyer?
The one that jumps out of my head, maybe this is kind of salesmanish, but it's like someone who you think kind of matches your style or personality. I know there's some like I am not necessarily going to swear and curse at the other side or sort of bluster more. But if we have to file a lawsuit, we'll file a lawsuit, send nasty demand letters, or tweak the language to say you must do this. And so I think the client sort of I don't want to say like you get along with the client or the client's attitude matches the attitude that you're going to give them.
Yeah, because you're an extension of the client in some regard. This is something I have a really strong opinion about. Okay. I've heard people say like, I want a, bulldog lawyer, right? As a litigator, if opposing counsel is courteous, polite, sophisticated, presents well, but is, exacting, a zealous advocate for the client, but is somebody who's going to seem reasonable in front of a judge, reasonable in front of a jury, is a sharp strategic thinker. That is so much more formidable as an opponent than somebody who's just going to come in and yell a lot, and then you can kind of jujitsu use their bluster and rage against them. I think it's a mistake when clients go for that type of lawyer.
I agree. I don't know if it works. I've heard stories over the years about some people. I think it was specifically a divorce lawyer that was yelling and screaming, and you're this, you're that, and somehow was successful. But I agree with you. In these business settings, if you go into like a business case and somebody acts like they're like it's all the sky is falling. I am much more concerned about the nice person who is. I mean, that doesn't mean they're not pushy, and day after a deadline, they're making demands, and they're sending. That kind of person is, I think, much scarier when you think, oh my God, they know all the rules, and that's what I think we try to do is depending on clients' budgets and clients' attitudes, and I think there's different types of cases where if you know the other side versus if the other side is a stranger. I think this is like in the real estate and business realm, you probably know the other side a little bit.
At least a little bit.
And then, or some might, for a long time in like a business divorce setting.
Right.
You're going to have a lot of information about them as opposed to sorry, this is a tangent, I'm not sure. But in the setting where maybe the client doesn't want you to push it like crazy. Maybe they're going to go have conversations with the business side of the other party.
Right.
You might adjust your tempo accordingly. But I think courteous and relentless is much more scary than courteous, competent, and relentless is much scarier than a kicker and screamer who is going to try to put on a show.
Right.
I don't know what other settings. Maybe there's personal injury settings or divorce settings where people like that kind of thing.
Okay, so tell us about some more types of cases that you handle.
Okay, so types of cases where where I think I am, like adding a lot of value. Client came in and said, I don't know what the heck to do with this thing. Or they were, specifically clients are concerned that they're about to get in trouble. And then you can just sort of read through, we've been sort of guiding through. One was real estate transactions. I think they're very, biggest purchase that people make. They come
the bulk of a middle-class person's net worth.
Right. So they, Colorado, everything, the market is up and down or very much in demand. So something like a specific performance case, the other side might be trying to cancel the deal. Maybe they got a better offer from someone else and you have a client. I think there's lots of situations where you can force. So you can sort of make the client feel better and try to fight the good fight to try to force a seller to sell to your buyer. I have one where a seller had kind of the flip, or I have one in process now. The seller kind of has the flip where a buyer has tried to back out of a deal because they think the market shifted and they want to get their earnest money back. So they're fighting over a couple $100,000. And the client, I think, thought they would have to give it back. And I said, well, I don't think so. So far. Yeah. So you look through, this is kind of I want to say you're looking through all the detail of everything that the realtor said to each other and all the clients said to each other. Did they send the right notices? Kind of a very, like I want to say a board game-esque, but kind of a nitpicky mechanics of the deal. Because all this stuff has been happening between the realtors and the clients and the inspectors and things. So we sort of came in and what are we doing? We're trying to told the client we're confirming that the deal is dead and we're going to sell it to someone else. And if we sell it for less, we're going to go keep the earnest money against the first buyer because they tried to unjustly bail on the deal. I don't know if they're just trying to negotiate the price down. In the event, it's kind of, you become an extension of this difficult deal that's gone sideways and try to force it to go your client's way. And certainly the client, I don't think realtors have a lot of their purpose, the salesmanship aspect of things, but I think they're immediately out of their depth to say, oh my God, now these people hate each other. We're trying to get them to like each other and do a deal and everybody to be on the same page to work towards the same goal. And now they are pushing and pulling in opposite directions. And the realtors really need someone to come in and
I really think realtors earn their money. That's a hard job. I really
to get
think
someone
it's
to buy,
hard. The client service aspect of it. But once it gets into a dispute, that's not.
It's not their thing.
Yeah. the making order out of the chaos. Okay.
Another one that comes up a lot is the post-closing failure to disclose a defect.
Yeah.
And I think this drives clients crazy. They've been in the house 3 or 6 months,
Right.
and they find this problem, and they think, oh my God, it's going to cost $5, $10, $20, $50,000
Right.
to fix a foundation issue or a mold issue or whatever it's going to be.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks for talking to me today.
Yeah, there we are.